All right, so again, we're going to take a look at a problem out of our textbook, and this is going to be chapter 5.7, number 78. In this problem, we're going to be launching an object from the ground level, and we want to know at what time t it's at a particular height. So keep in mind, if you were to launch something at the ground level, as it goes through time, it follows this parabolic curve, okay? So that if we were interested in a particular time, it's at a particular height, then most likely we're going to have two times, one on the way up and one on the way down. The only exception would be is if you were looking for the vertex or the height of the maximum height of the object. In that case, it would only be one time. Now, in this particular problem, it wants us to find out how long it takes the rocket to reach a height of 96 feet. Well, we have a formula for height, so we want h of t to equal 96 feet. But what's h of t equal to? It's negative 16t squared plus 80t. We want that to equal 96 feet, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get my 96 on the left-hand side, so I'm going to subtract 96 from both sides. I always like to have it in standard form. And then that leaves me with negative 16t squared plus 80t minus 96 equals 0. But I always like my leading term to be positive, so here's a negative 16. So I'm going to multiply this whole equation through by negative 1. When I do that, essentially what I do is I change the signs, right? And I'll get 16t squared minus 80t plus 96 equals 0. Okay, so as always, the first thing we want to do is look for a greatest common factor. So we look at 16, negative 80, and 96. So we see that 16 does go into all those. So I'm going to go ahead and factor out a 16, which I don't know what that is. Is there an undo? Okay. I'm going to factor out a 16, which leaves me with t squared minus 5t plus 6 equal to 0. And remember, we can always divide both sides by 16. That'll get rid of that factor. And this, of course, is still 0. So now the situation we have is we have a trinomial equal to 0. So we're going to see if we can factor this into two binomials. So again, thinking about the FOIL method in reverse, we know that the first term is going to come from multiplying the first terms. We know that the middle term is going to be a combination of the outer plus the inner. And we know that the last term is going to be from the last terms. So that being said, if the first term has to give us t squared, then for sure this has to be t and t. Now we look at the last term, and we see that that's a positive sign. So remember, if you're going to multiply two numbers together and it's going to be positive, then the signs have to be the same. It's either going to be positive times a positive or negative times a negative. But either way, you'll get a positive. So then we look at the middle term, which is negative 5t. So here, this is going to tell us that both terms have to be negative. So I'm looking for factors of 6 that are going to add to get negative 5. So you can start just looking at factors 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Remember, the signs have to be the same. So we can see that negative 2, 3x, or negative 2t, and minus 3t. So to get that, I just put my 2 and 3 here. Now again, you do the quick FOIL method check, right? First terms, t squared, check. Outer terms, minus 3t. Inner terms, minus 2t. That does give me my minus 5t. And of course, my last terms, negative 2 times negative 3 does give me my positive 6. So this is great. We can use that zero property multiplication, like we did earlier, to say, well, let me erase some of this. If the first term was equal to 0, then the whole thing would be 0. Right? So, let's use red. If this was equal to 0, then the whole thing would be 0. So we say, well, t minus 2 equals 0, which means t equals 2. Okay, that's a valid answer. It's not negative. Or we get to the second option, which maybe t minus 3 is 0. Well, if that's the case, then t would equal 3 seconds, which is also valid. So what we claim is this thing starts at time equals 0 on the ground, is launched up, and at 1 second, and at 3 seconds, maybe this isn't quite to scale. It's at a height of 96 feet. And of course, you can check that by plugging it in. But I'll save that for you. So, any questions? Feel free to send an email or ask your instructor. Thank you.